Amazing. Excuse me? We are starting now? Okay. So I'm with great honor, I am happy to announce Mr. Bob Russell, who is president and CEO of the Rochester Hearing and Speech Center, which is now just celebrating, I think 2022 was your 100th anniversary of serving. It's a non-for-profit. He's going to tell us all about it, where you've come and where you're going. You've got, I know, all kinds of, they just went through a whole complete branding, rebranding program, and it got great stuff going on. But he joined Rochester Hearing Speech Center in October of 2020. Previously, he served as the executive director for the upstate New York region of the American Diabetes Association, CEO of Gilda's Club of Rochester, which is a cancer support community. And I remember when that first opened. He's been the executive director of the Little Theater Film Society, which is also, the Little Theater has done a phenomenal job making hearing accessible films available to us. He was also the director of marketing for Jiva Theater Center and spent 16 years as executive leader in the professional sports industry. And so he's got tons of experience and a diverse broadcast section of it. And so we welcome with open arms Bob Russell, and now you'll have some really good things to listen to. So have a cup of coffee and it's all yours.
I appreciate it so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate that. First, I want to thank Margaret and Susan for asking me to be here today. I guess there's a session earlier. If anybody was in there, I guess it's Rochester Hearing and Speech Center Day with HLAA, because Dr. Greg Horton, our director of audiology, was teaching a class that Art asked him to be involved with. So as Margaret mentioned, last year, 2022, was the 100th anniversary of our agency as a not-for-profit agency. It's pretty amazing in this day and age to be able to say that you've been around with that type of longevity as a not-for-profit. And, you know, for those that aren't fully aware who we are and what we do, I'm going to take you on a little history lesson today. Just for the beginning part, do we have any history fans? All right, just a couple of them. Because some people think of us as one part of our business or the other, or they think that we have a certain audience that we're delivering our programs to. I'll make it really simple. From newborns to seniors, that is our clientele. We are helping people along their entire journey of both hearing and speech throughout their lives, and always there with them. So if we want to get the slide up. Perfect. So these are actual photos that we found from the Democrat and Chronicle archives. And I will say the one thing that was really exciting for us last year was actually being able to dig into what the history of the agency was, and just seeing really how deeply rooted we were in Rochester, and really innovators in a lot of cases. So 1922 is when it all started. Alice Howe Hatton, who was a lip sync teacher, decided that, or lip reading teacher, decided that there needed to be an organization, an agency that supported children in the public schools that were suffering from hearing and speech loss. And they created the League the League of Hearing and Speech. And it was the first meeting here, they're saying, at the Women's Cities Club, which I don't believe is still around. I think that's been gone for a while. But that's how it all started, was a teacher seeing a need and wanting to find a way to fulfill what that need was. Another key milestone then for our agency was in the 1930s, where we developed ties with the Rochester City School District to actually then start implementing testing and services for children that were suffering. And then also we turned into a not-for-profit that had a focus on diagnosis and treatment for adults and children. So we started for children, but then quickly evolved into including adults in the work that was being done by the agency. And 1952 was a pivotal change for the organization as we expanded our services then to also speech, not just hearing. So being able to work with children that were suffering from speech impairments, working along with them in the home, working with them in our locations, working along with them in the school districts to try and help build their self-esteem, but also the tools that they needed to be able to start communicating. For children, it's very difficult when you are dealing with either a hearing or a speech impairment because you don't feel like you're a part of what's happening around you. And I say that as a child who went through 4 years of speech therapy, feeling isolated, being different, talking different. My closest friends were my biggest bullies back in the day. They were the ones that made the most fun of me. So, there's certain aspect of, trauma that goes along with it because you're isolated, you're feeling, and you retreat back from things. So it's really important, the work that we're doing with the kids, because again, it's helping them not only to learn how to work with their impairment, but also to let them know, you know what, it's okay to be a little bit different. It's okay because there's others just like you. And that's part of the community that we bring together and we build. In 1968, the L. Siegel Center opened their doors. This year, when we were celebrating our 100th, they were actually celebrating their 60th anniversary from the day that they got the charter. But the whole idea around L. Siegel community of agencies was that they wanted to bring together other human service agencies under one roof that could work with people that might have a myriad of issues that they're dealing with, or ones individually. We're very proud because we are one of the founding agencies of the Siegel Foundation and of the community that we have. So, just the history there. And if those of you that aren't aware, Al Siegel was a local radio host, and he was so involved with giving back to the community, not just his time, but his airtime to bring light to issues that were going on and about people with disabilities and sharing their stories. And, he's our namesake. It's been amazing to see how our agency as a whole, the Siegel Agency, has grown over the years, and all the different services that are available at multiple locations now, just not at the main location. That was a rendering from Elmwood Avenue, which is where our main office is. But Siegel has 7 different locations that they've got agencies that are providing services. And then the next 1975, we were the agency that first purchased the ABR equipment, the auditory brainstem response, which allowed us to start testing infants and children at a much more diagnostic rate. And as you can see in the picture, if you can, it's a little dark, but there's a red wire coming down from the forehead of the child, and that's measuring brain waves. And the ABR equipment, as you can get an idea of how big it was, we just purchased a new piece of equipment last year, an ABR equipment, and it was about the size of an iPhone. Now, the computer that comes with it's a little bit bigger, but it's absolutely amazing to see the technology of where it's come and the needs that there are. With this equipment, not only are we able to test infants and newborns, but also people with this is where the speech impairment comes in. My head works faster than my mouth. People with developmental disabilities, because they may not be able to have a traditional hearing test. It could be an issue with having the headphones on. It could be an issue with being in a booth. So this new equipment allows us to be able to expand that and give much more comprehensive care to the people that we're working with, to our clientele. So this brings us to where we are today, 2022. One of the big things that we are really trying to focus on during the course of the year was, what's the story to tell? Now, we could tell the story of the agency in a brief way, like I just did for you, of 100 years, but that's not really our story. Our story is the people that we have been able to serve, the people who have come through our doors looking for help, that we've been able to make a difference in their lives. And that only happens when you've got a truly committed group of individuals. I will say our staff is second to none. Not only are we working in the industry we are, but we're also working in not-for-profit. And the reason is that we all have a personal connection to the work that's being done, whether it's speech language pathology, whether it's physical and occupational therapy, whether it's the hearing health that we've got. But we wanted to be able to spend this year to tell those stories. And quickly, one of the stories I'll tell is one of our newest board members. He joined our board a year ago. I got a call one day and he said, Bob, my name's Jim Anderson. I just came in and got my new hearing aids. I absolutely love them, but that's only a small part of my story. Can I come in and tell it to you? I said, absolutely. So Jim came in, we met, very pleasant conversation. He said, here's why I'm here. I started coming here when I was 7 years old with a stutter. He remembered the name. Now, Jim is 74 now. He was 7. He remembered the name of every teacher that he had. He remembered the exercises that they would do. And he even remembered his classmates, even asking, hey, my first crush when I was 8 was a girl in my class. Do you have any way to track her down? His wife gave him permission to ask that question. We haven't yet, but we're still working on it. But this is the impact of what our agency has been able to do. It wasn't what we did. It wasn't our story. It was Jim's story. And there's thousands and thousands of stories like this. We have college age kids that will come in just to see if their teacher is still in the classroom because they were nonverbal for 3 years, an early part of their life. And they want to come in and say, you know what? I just graduated from McQuaid Jesuit. I am going to Nazareth College as a speech major. And I also have a second language, Italian, that I speak. And I'm going to be studying in Italy, which will be happening for this young man in March. That's the impact of what we really have been able to do. And those are the stories to tell. So part of it was taking advantage of having a 100th anniversary. And through that, we were able to get featured in 20 different media stories across television, radio, print, which is unheard of. I have a lot of friends in not-for-profit. I have a lot of friends that kept calling me last year saying, will you guys just stop? You're taking it away from the rest of us. Because to say we average almost 2 stories a month is pretty incredible. But the thing is, each of those stories was different, and it was to tell a different part of what we work with. One of the most impactful ones was connections with Evan Dawson. And Art, you were there with Greg Horton and with Jennifer Green Wilson, who was a teacher out at Brockport and a former client of ours as well, talking about over-the-counter hearing aids. So when OTCs got introduced in October, it had been years that it had been part of a discussion. We didn't know what to expect. But we took the position of, you know what? If it gets more people to an entry point, then that's a really good thing. But we want to make sure that they understand what are the things they need to look out for. Because it's one thing to say that I went into Best Buy and I bought a pair of hearing aids for just $200. But if you're doing it without a hearing test and you don't know what your levels are at and what you're dealing with, or if there's something else beyond just the initial hearing loss, you're just wasting your money. So our position has been, let's get out in front of it. Let's talk to people, not say this works better than that, but here are the questions you should be asking. Here's the things you want to consider. And not only when you guys did that XXI, it was an incredible interview, but also you were showing up on television as well with that same message. And I think the message of the partnership that there was between HLAA, Rochester Hearing and Speech Center, is something that we've really enjoyed having. I know Greg is also involved on the advisory committee. So he's always bringing different ideas back. Some of the materials that HLAA provided around OTC, the fact sheets, we were actually using that to share with our clients because we want to make sure that people are doing the research they need to do and they're getting the best possible care. So we were able to take the 100th year anniversary and really move that into let's get out there in front of the public a lot more than we had in the past. The other thing that I'm most proud of, I was at a kickoff event at Genesee Valley Park with for Early Childhood Services Month. And I was talking with Dr. Michael Mendoza, and out of the blue, he goes, so what's hearing test equipment cost? What's it cost to put together a hearing booth? We had just added a second booth at our Greece location, so I had the answer for him. And his jaw dropped. And I said, what are you thinking about? He says, we have this community health van. this mobile health unit. And he says the last 3 years, the only thing we've been doing with it is COVID and STDs. He goes, that's been the focus. We're trying to expand. So I said, well, instead of you going out and having to find an audiologist and buy the equipment, why don't we partner together? And we started creating this partnership around hearing health. And then we said, let's take it one step further. Let's turn this into a public service campaign, which we did. So if any of you watch television, hopefully, because every single local station got involved supporting this, we had a public service campaign that has been running since last May about the importance of hearing health. This is one of what the county says is the biggest growing areas that they're seeing a health concern with. We used to call things like a health risk or a pandemic or whatever. You can't use that term for anything but COVID anymore. It's ruined it for everything. But it's really a health concern of what's happening out there in the community. And it's also not the traditional. People think of, hearing loss. They think of what? Older people. The largest demographic for hearing loss globally right now is under 30 years of age. Because if you think about it, kids always have earbuds in, plugged into their phone. And when we have those in, we're listening to the music, but we're listening at it probably way too loud. And also gaming. Remember the old big cans that we used to get? I think they came out in the 70s. My father had them for a stereo. And it was like, oh my God, it's like I'm right there in the room with the musicians. Well, they use these for the gaming things now, but these games are full of car crashes and explosions and gunfire. And these kids are wearing them and you can hear them if you're in the other room. So this is part of this message is how do we reach people to at least make them aware of hearing health concerns, things that happen in your job, things that are happening out on the street when you walk down. I used to live literally right down the street on East Avenue. And when you got the bars and the buses and the cars going, that's doing damage. So this whole campaign was meant to bring attention to that. As part of this campaign, then we also said, let's do a pilot test in 2022 to do free hearing screenings to reach the underserved populations of our city of people that either don't have access to insurance, they don't have access to transportation. Let's go where they are and let's go where they feel comfortable. So Art, when you were just talking about the library system and the work that you're doing, we need to talk because one of the 3 locations we did St. Joseph's Community Center down on South. We did the Arnett Library branch, and we did the Jackson R Center on North Clinton because we wanted to spread that out. Now, coming into warmer weather, which hopefully we'll be having and not get a little surprise in winter, we'll be doing screenings through the county's mobile health unit. So again, we're not asking people to come to us. We're going into their neighborhoods. We're going where they feel comfortable. And to be able to do screenings and at least let people know where they are with their hearing. And if we feel they should have a more comprehensive test, or if they might be a candidate for hearing aids, but if they can't afford them, what do we do? One of the things that we started as part of our 100th is we kicked off a campaign that we're looking to raise $100,000 to create a financial aid fund. This could be for somebody who needs hearing aids that can't afford it. This could be families who need services for their child that, their insurance might tell them that they can get 12 sessions, but they really need 25 sessions to be able to, again, make care accessible to people regardless of what their situation is. We are the only not-for-profit in the city that does the work that we do. And we've said often, if we weren't here, what would happen to those people? What would happen to the services that they need? So this campaign and this partnership with the county really gave us something to be able to move. And this is part of where we're going in the future. Access to care, helping people financially that need it, and making people aware of what the risks are that they're looking at. The other part of our business is our ECS, our Education and Clinical Services. We are serving children from anywhere of 6 months to 3 or 4 years of age. We're getting children that are nonverbal. We're getting children that have hearing loss. We're getting children that don't have the occupational or physical skills that they need. And we're working not just with them, but with their families. And I think that's one of the key things is we really focus on mom and dad because we might see the child for 2 hours a day, but they're at home the rest of the time. How can we help the parents to learn how to work with their children? A lot of times we get people that come in, they're frustrated, they're defeated because they don't know what they need. They can't get the services that they are. Right now, the current Monroe County waiting list for children with services is close to 500 kids. These are kids that aren't getting what they need to help with their development at the most pivotal time of their lives. The problem is there's not enough providers. There's not enough people that are going to school to come out with those as those majors to be able to help, but also the number of kids is growing substantially that need the services. Two of our staff members today, as a matter of fact, they are in Albany. They were with the Children's Agenda. They hopped on a bus at 6 o'clock this morning to go advocate for early childhood services for children and for reimbursement rates for providers that are giving services. The reimbursement rates right now for ECS services is lower than it was in 2000. So it's a challenge for us as a not-for-profit because what you pay people is a lot more today than what it was in 2000. The cost for goods is a lot more now than it was in 2000, yet the reimbursements to help these children to be able to get the services is much lower. But this for me is one of the shining lights. If you ever come to our office during the day, you will see a parade of children walking around. And it is the best part of my day is to see them and see how they are able to advance in what they're getting. So we have everything from, again, early intervention programs 0 to 3 years of age, pre-K 3 to 5, and then we have a daycare program that is really meant to work with the daycare centers to go in and teach their staff how to work with the children and how to also evaluate children to see if something just doesn't seem right, that they need to have, they feel they need to have some kind of testing done. We are running classrooms 5 times a day or 5 times a week, and we have 3 to 4 every single day. So we constantly have kids coming in and out. For us, most of the kids that are coming, they don't just have one issue that they're dealing with. So every one of our classroom spaces, we have special educator. We have a physical therapist, we have a speech language pathologist, we have an occupational therapist, so that we can give those kids all the services that they need, and we're not pulling them aside so they feel different. When I used to get pulled aside in school to go to see the SLP and to have my speech class, it was not fun. What was fun was when I came back and they're like, oh, you missed the most boring thing ever that we had to discuss in history. But these are the systems. When I say we're serving newborns to seniors, this is exactly what our agency's been able to do. So this is where we brag a little bit. 2022, for the 15th time, we were named the Best Hearing Aid, Best Hearing Specialist Center as part of the Rochester Choice Awards that are run by the Democrat and Chronicle. So these are not only nominated, but also voted on by the community. We're not big on awards. I could write to an organization and say, here's $150, please send us a plaque that says we're part of the America's Best. This one means a lot to us though, because it's our community that's actually voting on it. And again, to be able to win this 15 times says a lot about not just the people in our community and how they view us, but also our staff, our audiologists, the people that are there day in, day out working. And I know we've got a few clients in this room. So thank you for trusting us with your hearing health. This year, they added a new category as well as part of this, and it was for best audiologist. And we were pleasantly surprised when we got the list of the 3 finalists and Dr. Greg Horton's name was on there. And he was pleasantly surprised because he didn't even know that it was an option. It wasn't a category. Well, Greg Horton won the very first Best Audiologist Award for the Choice Awards. And again, voted on by the community members, by people that come in and day out. So we were very proud, not just for our agency, but more so proud that Greg is being recognized because he really is one of the major faces of our agency. He's the one out there that has been going and doing the interviews about OTC for all the networks. because there's certain things that I was taught at an early age from my parents. And my father said, if you feel yourself drifting into a lane that you shouldn't be, get back in there and find the person it should be. So I'm very fortunate to have a partner in Greg to be able to do this. So we talked about the past. We talked about what we've done the 100 years. This is what we've looked like for the last 25 years. This has been our brand. This has been where we're at. I wasn't a big fan, I got to be honest, of our logo. And the big part is the actual logo mark itself is a box. I don't like being in a box. I think we're much more than that. So just a week and a half ago, we unveiled the future of Rochester Hearing and Speech Center. And that's our new look. There's somebody said, a friend of mine's a former audiologist, and I put it up on my Facebook page, and she goes, I don't know if it's just me, but those look like speech waves and hearing waves. I'm like, well, exactly. But it's also about the fact that this represents the journey that people take, right? Our journeys with dealing with health issues are not just a straight line from start to finish. They have peaks, they have valleys. This really represents the diversity of the people that we work with, but also that we are with them throughout that entire life journey, like a Jim Anderson, who I talked about earlier, who started coming to us for speech therapy when he was 7, and now he's in his 70s and he's loving his new hearing aids because he said, now I know when my wife's yelling at me, whether that's good or bad. So I'm happy to take any questions. I also want to thank everybody who stuck around on Zoom for this, but well, thank you so much, Margaret. Again, yes, Art.
I just want to, let me get in front of the camera. I just want to piggyback on what you were saying about Greg Horton, because twice now we've been involved in things that are on media and we didn't plan anything. In fact, the first time on TV, we didn't even know that we were both going to be on, but it seems like our minds were kind of in sync. So the result of that whole interview was very good. Then we went on WXXI, and we didn't talk about that before, but it came out really good. And so we look forward to working with him as we go forward. I just wanted to comment on over the counter. Okay. The knee-jerk reaction over the counter is often, why is HLAA monkeying around with over the counter trying to help these companies sell these hearing aids, which may not be very good. In some instances, they're okay. In other instances, they may not be very good. What we're finding is, as we go to the libraries and so forth, there are a lot of people that are now addressing their hearing loss that wouldn't do it otherwise, since over the counters are coming out, because the price barrier of hearing aids has been broken through. Okay. So they get into it, and then they look at our tip sheet and they go through all that stuff. And a lot of them are saying, maybe I'll just go to an audiologist, because an audiologist do all this stuff anyhow. Well, that's what an audiologist does. So there's kind of a boomerang effect there. But we who are out in the field talking to people have seen more interest in hearing loss, at least in my experience for about 15 years. I've seen more interest in hearing loss than I've ever seen before, just by virtue of the fact of all the advertising that's going on. So if you, well, the reason I'm saying this, if you run into neighbors, friends, relatives, whatever, and they're interested in OTCs, don't kind of push them away. Engage them in conversation and the complexity of it. We put the tip sheet in the newsletter a month or so ago. If you need more, we got them. But the point I'm trying to make is engage people and get them to understand what it's all about. And a lot of people will do the right thing for themselves. They'll either get it, they first of all get tested. And if once they get tested, then they'll know whether they're a candidate for OTCs, and they'll become a more informed consumer. If they're beyond being a candidate for OTCs, they know they got to work with an audiologist and get a regular hearing aid. So I just mentioned that because this whole thing is shifting, and shifting very rapidly. Okay.
Thank you, Art. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And I think, piggybacking on that a little bit more too, that we didn't know what to expect. I'm a part of a national organization. It's called the National Association for Speech and Hearing Centers. So it's not for profit to do the same work that we do around the country. And we're a small group. We've got about 35 active members. As I'm sure you know, right? You can have a lot of members, but how many are active that actually go? We actually just had our monthly call on Thursday, and OTC was one of the things we talked about. Because before going into it, some people are saying, do we actually go out and buy a supply of OTC? So if people come in our doors, we've got them available. We thought about that, but what we kept coming back to was, we don't know what these devices are going to do. We don't have a chance to test them. We are not going to dispense anything that could do more harm than good for people, or that we don't believe in. So we kind of took the approach. Let's just tell people we're happy to walk through with you. You want to go buy them? Fantastic. Again, use it as an entry point, right? They keep comparing it to cheater glasses. You can now go into the dollar store, you get cheater glasses. Does that take away from, getting a pair of regular eyeglasses that you need? Absolutely not. But what we found was that nobody, and this is again across the country, no other agencies have actually seen any kind of negative impact on their business. And I think that was one of the biggest concerns that everybody had. We have other agencies that are for profit, doing what we do in the community when it comes to dispensing and testing. And I know some of them went out and they bought supplies of over the counter because they didn't want people walking out the door from them. We don't know if they've actually sold any of them, because once people do start having a conversation, they do start looking at, the fact sheets, it starts to bring up another questions for them. But it's got the dialogue going, and there's a thing called media tracker that they have where, a bit of news comes out and you can track over a week, 2 weeks, like how many hits, how many searches there are for it on the internet and things like that. Both times the last 2 OTC messages came out, it shot up through the roof for 2 days. And then it was out of people's minds. They weren't looking at it for it again. We don't know whether that's good or bad, because we don't know how much of them retained information about hearing loss in those 2 days that they had. But, every environment changes. And for ours, this is one of the big ones. We hope that there are people that might get into over-the-counter hearing aids, the right ones, because it will at least help them to start getting support for what they need. We just hope, again, they're not getting more damage, because I don't know about you, but if I do a hearing test on my phone and that's what tells me where I'm at, I don't have a lot of faith in that. And that's unfortunately what a lot of the manufacturers are either doing it by phone or on their website. And I know my speakers sound different than Margaret's speakers. So how are they telling? The only way to do it is to see a certified audiologist, somebody who knows what they're doing, and they'll help walk you through that. So thank you. Yeah, Chad.
Greg, I'm going to bring up a question from Madge Ludwig. Just can you read that from there? I can read it to you.
It says, does being a not-for-profit mean you offer testing and hearing aids for less money? Great question, Madge. Yes, actually we do. We're not required to. But it's just the way that our system works, because we're dealing with a lot of people on Medicare and Medicaid that other practices do not see those people. So for us, we have to price ourselves accordingly for that. Now, we recently did just raise the cost of our actual appointments by $10 because we saw that we had not raised any prices for appointments since at least 2010. I know my costs when I go to my doctor and my dentist have gone up over the years. So we had to do that. Also with hearing aids, we kind of fall at the lower end of cost compared to the same aids being sold at different places. And part of that is, again, by design, because we want to make sure people know that we're focused on getting them into the right piece of equipment that they need, not getting them into the high-end hearing aid because we can make a bigger profit margin and then we can pay out our bonuses and our commission. That's one thing that we do not do compared to a commercial hearing aid company, is we do not pay our audiologists or our dispensers commission based on what they sell, or a bonus if they hit certain sales levels. That just does not fall within the realm of being not-for-profit. But we also have to run a business and we have to keep our doors open. We have the same expenses that everybody else does. One of the things that helps us though is to be able to create things that will allow us to go to donors, people in the community, foundations, and say, look, we're running this type of program to help support people that don't have access to need. Would you be willing to support that? And again, through this financial aid fund, we actually just found out last week that there was one we applied for back in the fall. We got awarded $5,000. That doesn't seem like a big amount of money, but $5,000 to be able to provide hearing devices for people will go a long way, because we will at least be able to take care of 2 people in need with that. So that's where being a not-for-profit, again, we feel we have to make ourselves affordable for the people that need us, but also having to keep in mind that we are running a business and we have to, at the end of the day, I used to love when I first got not-for-profit, people thought like, oh, so if you lose money, it just gets written off, right? I'm like, no, you're not for profit, but you have to make a profit. You have to break even. And yes.
Going back to when you said that you went to different places to service people like children or whatnot, library, etc. Have you considered at all Cameron Community Center?
Diane asked when we're going out into the community if we've considered Cameron Community Center, which is down off of Lyle Avenue. It is in one of the lowest class areas, most in need for any kind of services. We actually met with their executive director, Olivia, 2 weeks ago. I met Olivia at a Rochester Press Radio Club luncheon and we got talking, and she is doing a ministry in my old neighborhood that I grew up in. And it's a lot different of a neighborhood now than it was then. So, I said, thank you for what you're doing. They have people that are coming to them that don't even have food. So they're serving meals every single day. They're bringing teens in off the streets to be able to give them other things to be able to focus on and to learn. But one of the biggest things is health related. And she said, we never thought about hearing health as something that should be a concern, especially with all the seniors that we serve, until we had met. So stay tuned, because we are definitely going to be doing a program with them to go into their locations and to be able to provide those services. So thank you.
Do you guys get any money from the just $1 campaign for Al Siegel, or is that completely different stuff?
Oh, that's a great question. For those that didn't hear, do we get any money from the Al Siegel just $1 campaign? Yes, we do. So the partnership that we all have with Siegel is that, they run their own fundraising events, but the events that they're running is to help them filter money down to all of the agencies. So when they do their walkabout, which is in October, if you haven't heard about walkabout and you want to have just a good feel, it happens right before Halloween at Eastview Mall. All the families, all the kids are coming out dressed up. And it's amazing to see how creative people can get with costumes for wheelchairs. Last year we had the yellow bus, right? The magic school bus out of a wheelchair. But yes, so we do receive proceeds from that, from all the other events that they do. They take very good care of all the agencies. And that's why we also are working. It's like I said, a true partnership working with them to help raise their profile as well. So.
This is
Yes.
Fred on the Zoom. I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question I'm on Zoom. This is Fred. And I was wondering, in the early part of your presentation, you talked strictly about children. What do you offer for adults at your location? In other words, is there something in addition than the children that you take care of? In other words, what about adults that have a speech problem or whatever? Do you have something in that area?
Fred, thank you so much. Nice meeting you for the question. We currently do not offer anything speech related for adults. We used to have a therapy program for people that had suffered strokes. But what started happening was the hospital system started to set up They wanted a one-stop shop. So they started setting up their own departments and their own therapies so that they did not have to send people somewhere else. They could go where they were comfortable being. So we just couldn't compete with going up against, the big hospital systems. So right now for adults, the biggest area really that we have is hearing health and the work that we're doing in that realm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, I have a couple of things. I'm going to work backwards in my list. This just one dollar campaign. Do you have, I think that is just the most brilliant campaign I've ever seen. Do you have any idea how much they actually generate from that? I mean, maybe that's out of your.
Yeah, I can't get into specifics, but it's well over $100,000. And I will say when Dan Meyer, the former president of El Siegel, rolled this idea out, and I knew Dan way back. I was working in another not-for-profit, and I said, I absolutely hate you right now because it is the most simple idea. Just give us $1. And nobody can try to replicate it. But it is very successful for that reason, is that it gets a lot of people involved that maybe have heard about, but they don't want to give $25 or $50. And most people do make a donation over $1, but I know when I get my envelope every year, I put my dollar right in it.
It's a no-brainer. So the other thing, back to where you were talking about, let me see. No, that was my own note. With the programs that you run for children, do you work with BOCES and those too?
Yes.
I guess.
I forgot that I'm showing an empty podium as I'm talking. Chaz, you're supposed to tell me, get back there. Yeah, so we work with BOCES. We work with Monroe County School District. We work with all of the different districts around. So we have contracts with a lot of them, especially if we're going into their locations to be able to do the programs there for the children. We also work with Head Starts and some of the preschools, because again, we're trying to get these kids at their earliest age that they realize that they're suffering from a disability. So, that's where when I talked about the reimbursement rates, a lot of that is driven by the state for education that we're working around. Right. But we work. Yeah, we're not just Monroe County. We're in Ontario County. We're in Wayne County with the districts that we're working with. I'll be honest, one of the challenges is that, we bring people on, we're training them, we're doing great work. They're in a school district and they're doing services. And next thing we know, school districts trying to hire them. And they're able to offer them a state pension. They're able to offer them more money. They get their summers off, and it puts us kind of at a disadvantage. But, I know very closely we work Webster, Penfield, Greece, Gates Tri-Li. So we have staff that, I got to be honest with you, in almost 3 years being there, I've maybe seen once or twice because they're out on the road. So we're going in home, we're going in schools, in daycares to be able to provide the services. Okay. Yes, Ron.
I got 2 questions. Do you give tests to anybody that walks into the hearing center? Because one of the reasons I found out I was really losing my hearing was through your van that come out to where I work, which is a noisy environment. The other question is, what about used hearing aids? I got a few that I got newer ones since, but the old ones are they good?
So the 2 questions for those on Zoom that might not have heard, one was, do we offer free tests when people come, if they come to our office? We don't do it through the office because we have insurance issues that we have to see if they have insurance. That's why we're doing these community screenings that are open to people anywhere to come out. So right now, that's how we have to follow our regulations for that. As far as accepting older hearing aids and refurbishing them and fixing them, that's actually something that Greg and I have been working on doing as a possibility to be able to, again, get people into a set of hearing aids without it having to cost them money to do it. So we're looking into, what do we need equipment wise for other models that might come in than what we handle to be able to fix them? How do we train our staff with that? How do we separate time out for them to work on that? And then the most important part is, how do we get this out to the community? Right? I remember, I'm a former Lions Club member, and we used to have the glasses, the cases set up, drop your glasses in. We're trying to figure out how that would work out for hearing aids as well. What we don't want to have happen is that, we just kind of become a distribution center for people to drop them off regardless of whether they work or not. And then we have to go through all the process with that. But that is something that we're working on right now, because again, it's another way to get something. It might not be the newest model, but if it still works and it can help somebody who doesn't have them and have the access to it, it's really important for us to be able to do that. So.
Marlene Sutcliffe has a question.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm an adult client of your agency. It's important for me because I live in the city. You are accessible with free parking, and I could choose to go anywhere, but I try to do my business in the city, and I have been very happy with the services I have received from your agency. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Because Marlene, you're the type of person that we'd love to be able to hear from. Usually you only hear from people when you do something wrong, right? I had the worst experience. That's what my phone is. But we love hearing that people have good experience with it. Like I said, we're very fortunate with our staff. They're very knowledgeable. They want things that they've done before. Another thing that we started to do this year was cochlear implant mapping and evaluations. That was something that's been talked about for years. What we found is that a lot of people that were candidates potentially for it wouldn't want to go because they didn't want to give up the relationship that they had with their audiologist. They have that trusting relationship. So we started saying, what would it look like? What would we have to do if we were doing that internally? So if somebody is truly a candidate, they don't have to go somewhere else for that. Now, we don't do the surgery. We leave that up to the ENTs, but we're able to do the evaluations, walk people through, and then once they get their implants, to be able to do the mapping on it. Again, it's just another service that meets the needs of what people were telling us they were really looking to get from us. And I know, Greg and Dr. Sheila Katz, they've been going through tremendous, and I mean tremendous training for this. But again, it's just another way for us to serve the need. A lot of the programs that we do, whether they're on the hearing or the speech side, come out of a need that isn't being fulfilled somewhere else. And our question is always, can we do it? Can we do it with the technology and the staff that we have now? And if not, what will it take? And that's how we were able to go out and do, buying new ABR equipment to do the infant testing, buying new CUDA waves to be able to do off-site testing. There was more than just, a pass or fail. So, we see what the need in the community is and we try to react around that. So am I over? Okay.
Fred has another question. Let me bring him up.
Yes, my question is not a question, it's a thank you. For years, I went to you for service for the regular hearing aid, and they kept trying different things, all sorts of testings and so on. Finally, the girl said she felt that she had gone as far as she felt she could with what my problem was, and suggested that I look into a cochlear implant, which I did. And then thank God I did. I'll tell you, I appreciate the fact that all the time and services they offered to me prior to my getting the cochlear implant, because it led me to the HLAA organization, as well as finally getting my cochlear implant, which has really been wonderful for me. I have no complaints, except I wish I had done it when I was younger and had both ears done instead of just the one. But I appreciate the service that I did get from your organization.
Well, Fred, you're very welcome, and I'm so glad that you're doing well. And, don't we all wish we would have made choices differently when we were younger? It would have made life a lot easier now, but yes.
My name is Jackie Lynch. I've been a member of this community for many, many years. I wasn't born deaf. I was born with hearing. I lost my hearing when I was only 6 years old from measles. Now, the thing is, through my whole life, I've been working on my hearing loss. I went to private school for the deaf in New York. Now, last year, March 17, 2022, I finally had a cochlear implant on my left ear. That didn't help me. I don't think it worked for everybody. I'm not wearing it now because it drives me crazy. The high pitches make me jump. Okay, I've been to mapping. My next mapping will be in March this year. And I'm still not very happy with hearing aid. I spent over $5,000 on this hearing aid. It's still not good, still not happy. I've been to hip reading, all classes, everything my whole life, and I'm over 80. See, and it's not for everybody. So
For sharing. I wish Dr. Horton was here to hear that, but I want to share that with him. Absolutely. All right. We good? I don't think I'm going to take 7 minutes unless there's more questions. But I just want to reiterate, we really, truly appreciate not just the partnership, but the support that we get from HLAA. There's things that we just don't have bandwidth to do. And to know that this agency is there to be able to help us with that, supply us with materials, to be able to be involved with different events, being involved with media events that we're doing, but also being able to get out there and share all of your information as well. That's what, for us, it's about that partnership. So we're happy. We hope, I love when I hear like they got new members. Great. Maybe some of them came through us. And so here you go.
I just want to thank you so much. I found everything that you were saying so informative, and it made me go back in my hearing history and remember years ago, I started out at Rochester Speech and Hearing, and there was difficulty with the audit. My hearing loss is very severe, and there was difficulty with the hearing of the audiologist that I had getting it adjusted right. And I can remember the head of the audiology department, and I don't know who he was, he sat in with me and the audiologist and made it right.
Yeah, we've had a lot of big shoes to fill at our agency. We look back at the people that came before us, and then that was part of this year for the 100th is, we're standing on their shoulders on the foundation they built. So that does not surprise me. I hear a lot. People still remember Dr. Irwin Brown, former president and CEO, Dr. Peter Hickson, did a lot to change things. Jim Feuerstein, yes, absolutely. I'll be honest, it's intimidating for me. When I joined the agency, people that held my positions were doctors of audiology or educators. I was a business guy. I was a development person, a marketing person. So I'm like, I can't compete with that, but my parents always taught me, you don't have to be the smartest kid in the sandbox. Just be smart enough to surround yourself with people that can help you get there. And that's exactly what we've got. The other thing, because we are a not-for-profit, one of the most, cherished things that we have is our board of directors. These are people that believe in what we're doing because a lot of them have gone through their own journeys. And they're there to help guide us. They're there to help open doors for us, be able to help us figure out how we can raise funds so that we can do this program. We don't want to do just, 3 tests in the community in the matter of a year. We want this to be a monthly. monthly thing. So being able to have that type of support as well for us has been absolutely incredible. Yes, sorry.
Since we have a minute, I want to give you another success story. I have a son, Eric, who's about 55 years old now. When he was a toddler, just, preschool, he couldn't talk. He was having great difficulty talking. Went to Rochester Hearing and Speech, and they got him so he could function enough to work out at BOCES. And then after a few years, BOCES mainstreamed him into the regular school system, and he went through there and he finally graduated from high school. And he got into, while he was in high school, he got into cleaning schools during the summer. So through Rochester Rehab, there was a contract at the federal building, and they took a bunch of young people and they were cleaning the federal building. And one of the mechanics at the federal building one time when I was down there said, "You can't believe how good this building is since these kids came in, because they do a lot better job." Okay. Well, then he went to Disney World for a couple of years, but he didn't like all the sunshine down there. So he came back north. He was back here about 2 weeks, and that was 20 years ago. He was back here about 2 weeks, and he got a phone call from Strong, and he went over there. And he's been cleaning operating rooms at Strong. He's now a team leader cleaning the operating suites at Strong. He's been doing that for years. Now, this is a very difficult job and it requires a lot of very precise communication, because you can imagine how stringent it is to make, with all the disease going around, to keep those operating rooms clean. Okay. But there's a real success story, and you guys gave him the germ of what started him on a career path that's been very successful. Without you, I don't think he would be functional at anywhere near the level that he is today.
Again, these are the stories that just, even for those of us, we're not around. It just reinforces the work that's been done. I'll tell you real quick, because I know we're coming up on time. Part of this year, the town of Greece and the Greece Chamber of Commerce wanted to honor us for our 100th. So we had a ceremonial ribbon cutting at our Greece office. And we got the proclamations and all that. One of the people that got invited was New York State Assemblyman Josh Jensen. Greece is in Josh's district, and I had never met him. And we were talking before, and then they said, during the ceremony, we'd like to ask Assemblyman Jensen to say a few words. And he said, when I was 2 years old, I had a severe speech impairment. And I went to Rochester Hearing and Speech Center. And now I stand on the floor in the New York State Assembly to be speaking. They are that I've proved them wrong all the time. He's like, he provides speech services for his son. When they realized that his son had very severe speech impairment, not verbal, he said, "You were the first